Alright y'all, as I promised, I'm going to do a little video and talk a little bit about spraying fungicides and insecticides. We are a conventional farm, which means we're non-organic. That gives us a little more flexibility than the organic guys as far as our spray program, and it's also a little bit more affordable to spray. Our chemicals are not nearly as high as OMRI listed stuff, but it's still really expensive, and that's something, if you turn this off before it's over, if you get nothing else from it, know that every time my air blast sprayer and tractor goes to the field, I'm spending at the low end somewhere around $40 or $50 an acre, the high end potentially up to $100 an acre spraying by the time I get my tank mix of fungicide and insecticide and surfactant to make it stick and make it work. So that's not something that I just do on a whim. It's something that I've put a lot of thought into beforehand. So I've got this little book that my Syngenta rep worked up for me several years ago, and NC State puts out one of these tomato spray guides every year. This is a really handy little dude, and if you follow it, you'll keep your tomatoes fairly healthy. Manzate and copper, Actigard, I ran it through the drip. That's week 1. Week 2 is Manzate and copper. So this week I'm spraying Manzate and Inspire Super. It says plus Actigard. I don't spray Actigard. I run it through the drip because I feel like it works better that way. So we're going to spray a couple of pounds to the acre of Mancozeb, and I believe it were 16 ounces to the acre of Inspire Super. This handy dandy little paper here, you can flip it over, and actually it does not give rates. Thought I had one that did, but this one doesn't. Anyway, this one is really handy because it tells you what your post-harvest interval is. So Inspire Super is a 0-day PHI, and Manzate is a 5-day PHI, and we are definitely in the clear on that. I am going to put a little insecticide in there because I think, even though I have sprayed, or even though I have run imidacloprid through the drip, I believe we've got some thrips hanging around, and I don't need to get tomato spotted wilt virus going on and wipe out my field with that. So I'm going to probably spray a little Besiege in my tank mix to wipe those out. And Besiege gives you a little bit of residual control too. That's a Syngenta chemical. But after I get the tomatoes sprayed, I've got to switch over and spray squash, and I've actually got a tab for a squash spray program. Don't always go by the squash program because it's not quite as critical as the tomatoes, but I follow it fairly close. Sometimes I don't get too carried away with the downy mildew stuff or the Phytophthora. They kind of go hand in hand, but we're on week 3 of spraying squash too. We're in harvest now. I sprayed a Rondus Opti last week. So chlorothalonil or Manzate plus Revis. I've got some Revis. I may go ahead and do that on all my cucurbits just because I don't have that much, and I'll stick with the program, and it'll make it simple. I do have some beans to spray, mainly with insecticide because they are at a real vulnerable stage. They're not on black plastic, they're on bare ground and no-tilled them in, and they're about this tall. That's a really vulnerable age for green beans. They can really get mowed down by some insect pressure in a hurry. So I'm going to try to go ahead and get some Besiege on them. Don't have a whole lot of disease pressure with beans or corn. Rarely ever spray either one of those with a fungicide. Sometimes I will if it's getting to where we're getting a ton of rain. Might throw a little chlorothalonil or Bravo in there, which is fairly inexpensive per acre to spray. The biggest thing with spraying, and I'm going to get to my equipment here in just a minute. The biggest thing with spraying, most important thing, and this keeps me up a lot of nights, is not killing our pollinators. Because if we don't have our pollinators, we might as well just pack it up and go home, because we're not going to grow anything. And what I mean by keeps me up a lot of nights is, generally speaking, I only spray after dark. I will start spraying at dusk, which I'm going to try to get done this afternoon so I can get home a little earlier. There's two good things about that. Number one, like squash and cucumbers, their blooms close up at night, so you're not spraying insecticide down that bloom hole. And also, the bees are in bed, so they're not out flying around. You're not killing them actively with the insecticide that you're spraying. So I'm going to go get the tractor and the sprayer, and I'll talk a little bit about that while I'm running water, mixing my first tank. This is my little air blast sprayer, or mist blower, some people call them. It's got a name on it somewhere. I bought it through a dealer. Pretty sure they're manufactured in Oklahoma. Kansas, close. But it's basically a squirrel cage blower, a big one, that runs off of, you got your PTO shaft, and it gears it up, way up, and then out the back of the pulley for the fan sets this roller pump. When I bought it, it had this cheesy little 4-roller pump on it. Didn't last very long. Couldn't get a lot of gallons per acre out of it because it had such a small pump. I replaced it with this stainless 8-roller pump. If you're spraying fungicides and you're using a roller pump like I am, you're gonna have to rebuild it probably about once a year, depending on the acreage that you're covering, because those fungicides, especially like manzate or copper, which are granular, they really eat a pump in a hurry. They just eat those rollers up until they're not filling the gap, and they won't make the pressure anymore. Your gallons per acre will drop, and you know it's time to buy another $40 set of rollers to put in your pump. And I spray at about 80 psi generally. I would like to get a new set of nozzles. These are the original nozzles, and I couldn't get the gallons per acre out of it that I wanted to, so I actually drilled them out. I know that's kind of jerry-rigging, but it works, and I'm able to get the gallons that I need out of it, and it still does a really good job. I used to use a boom sprayer, and you just don't really get good coverage with a boom sprayer unless you've got a high pressure setup. Now, I know people that spray with a boom sprayer, but they've got a big enough like a multi-piston pump or a huge diaphragm pump that will allow them to spray at about 100 psi over a 50-foot boom. That's a different story, because you can really penetrate the canopy. Where you run into problems is you just can't really, with a standard boom sprayer, you're not going to get the gallons per acre that you need. A lot of fungicides call for 50 to 100 gallons per acre. Air blast sprayer, you can get by with a little less because you're really penetrating, blowing it into the canopy, but I still try to always spray about 50 gallons per acre of water. That's not fungicide or insecticide. So most of our insecticides are a couple pounds of like manzate, which is a granular, or a pound of copper, or Like this Inspire Super I'm fixing to spray on tomatoes is 16 ounces. So 16 ounces across an acre is pretty minimal. You have to spray really, really slow in order to get it to penetrate the canopy and get the gallons per acre that you need. Since I have gone to spraying 50 gallons per acre, I have noticed a dramatic improvement in my overall crop health and how I used to spray around 25 gallons an acre, and the edges of the blocks would be really good looking and the middle of the block would be almost dead, where I was going too fast and I wasn't putting out enough gallons, so it just wasn't, the middle of the blocks were not getting protected. So I'm going to go ahead and get this mixed up and take y'all with me to the field so you can kind of see it in action. Now the reason I had it sitting there running as I filled it is to get the agitator running, because 2 pounds of manzate is a pretty good amount of powder, and it takes a while circulating that to really get it through the system. If you don't do that and you don't do a good job, when you start spraying, you paint the first 20 foot of tomatoes brown and the rest of them you're pretty much spraying water. So it's critical that you get it mixed up really well. Alright y'all, I'm gonna wrap this thing up. I appreciate y'all watching. Hopefully it was helpful to you in some way. If you got more questions, something I didn't cover good, I'm sure there was something that I missed, ask away. I try to get back to all the comments, and I don't ask for this often, but really trying to grow the channel. If you're enjoying what you see in here, hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. Hit that bell so you know when I put out new videos. Try to put out one once a week. Try to put them out on Wednesday at lunchtime. Sometimes I fall short, but that's my goal. But I appreciate you guys watching. See you next time.